All right. So this presentation is the first of a series of presentations. The first given by me today, right now, and the second given by Roddy at 1 o'clock today. And this is going to be a practical approach. It's going to be as practical as possible to introduce you guys to tools that we learned about and used in the field in Costa Rica not this past summer, but the summer of 2013. And then Roddy at 1 o'clock is going to talk about how the data from these tools is to be assessed and how it's important in community development, your projects, and how your team can better understand. Okay? Yeah, thanks, Roddy. So I'll begin with giving an introduction. What I'll be talking about for the next hour, 45 minutes with some time for Q&A, is tools for effective monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And this kind of stems off of EWB's new initiative of the PMEL, which I'm sure some of you who are starting new projects have gotten introduced to and have learned a little bit about. So where Roddy and I learned about this was called the Globalization and Community Health Field School, run through the University of South Florida. This was a National Science Foundation research experience for undergraduates that both Roddy and I participated in the summer of 2013. It was one of the first in its kind of a mix of anthropology and environmental engineering in a global environment in the mountains of Costa Rica. And this was an amazing opportunity for the both of us. We're able to learn about how two fields mixed together with anthropology and engineering and an interdisciplinary approach, which the National Science Foundation is really pushing in its grant funding and programs. And specifically, it was environmental engineering. So we were looking at how, in our group, there were two groups, a food group and also a wastewater group. We were looking at how does a community perceive farms in this region, and how does the engineering in the farm actually integrate into the community aspects, what the community might not understand, what the community does understand, and what's kind of going on within the community interactions and social dynamics of the community. And we learned the tools on how to actually figure that out. And we also took some coursework on engineering, fecal coliform samples, biochemical oxygen demand, total suspended solids, all that, the engineering also combined with all the tools that I'll be talking about today in the presentation. So you can see we had some real good times getting some poop water out of which we called the poop troop, which was great. So we had a lot of fun during the summer. Stuck some pitchers and took some samples out of a collection tank, and also participated, I can't say that, you guys can see, participated, there we go, in a health fair, just kind of introducing ourselves to the community, establishing a base so we can introduce ourselves and kind of get to know some of the people in the community, as well as giving them some indicators of their health. So that was a really good experience. And I'll give you a pathway. This is in its third year of a 4-year grant cycle through the NSF. So any of you that are interested in anthropology or engineering, this is a REU that you can get involved in, and you just go to the NSF REU webpage, look for the link, and you can apply. Anywhere from between your freshman and junior years, you can apply. It's a 10-week program, so check that out if you're interested. It's really great through the University of South Florida. Okay, so I'm going to talk about why we do this first. Why are we interacting with the community? Why do we need to do these things? Why do we need to learn about these tools and use these tools? And I guess in a general aspect, most of us in EWB are engineers, right? And engineers, going through 4 years of training, or if you get a master's, if you get a PhD, you're kind of, from my experience, what I've seen, what you're exposed to in social science is like this. Engineering, math, science, design, huge. But social science is a little bit. So we're not expected to be experts in social science. However, as part of EWB, as development engineers, humanitarian engineers, participating in Engineers Without Borders, we should have exposure to social science, should have introductory skill in social science. And so having this, I'll talk about project teams later, but having a project team with a social scientist as well as with your introduction to social science should be an integral part of your project team. So the first is community structure and ideas. Using these tools will allow you to understand social dynamics, the interaction between men and women, the community leader identification, which is really important, identifying leverage points. And from my experience, I was in Panama 2 weeks ago. Dr. Amade likes the word, he kind of presented the idea of the positive deviant, which shows who the person in the community is a source of motivation, who can show others in the community that change can actually happen. Through these tools, the community also has the ability to express their thoughts and interests. So it gives them the pathway, or it gives them a way to be able to say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what we want, this is what we need, and gives you information and data to be able to work with. Also, a lot of times we might go into a community as a project team, as a student group or professional group, and say, wow, this is a deficit here, this is a deficit here, this is a deficit here, and this is what we think is the best solution here. But in the end, it's the community that's going to be having this project over its entire life. So it gives you a priority list. So from the information from these tools, you can create a priority list to be able to go through all of the projects that you think may be needed and prioritize them based on their thoughts. And I already kind of touched on the leverage point identification. Another is trust and interaction. A big part of my experiences with communities internationally is we're coming in as an outside entity unknown to the community. And it's important for us to have establishment with people on the ground that have already had community interaction, that have already put projects through the cycle in country. So being able to run through these tools with the community brings you in as an outside entity to a friend, a trusted person in the community, and someone that can actually eventually become part of someone's family. In some of the projects I've been in over the past 3 years, I've become really good friends, and they treat me just as like they would have treated their cousin or their brother or their sister. And it's amazing to see that, and social science really comes in, and understanding their culture is really important. Big one, conversation, language, communication. I work with a community in Peru in the mountains, and Quechua is the language that is dominant in the community, and very little of the population speaks Spanish, which I know, and I know Spanish, but I don't know Quechua. So there's a communication barrier that you kind of have to get over, and having someone in your project team that can speak that language that you may not know is really important. So I'll show this is just kind of a quick story in Peru. Conversation, communication, hanging out, having fun is really important in these situations. It's not always about engineering. It's not always about the project. It's about establishing friendships. And this is my really good friend Florentino in Peru, and he brought me to go meet his father. His father was a gold miner in the Amazon, and Florentino has 23 brothers and sisters. So incredible, huge family, and it blows my mind. But to be able to meet this man was great, and to be able to interact and really work with him has been a really good experience. And right now, instead of being a gold miner, they run a guinea pig farm and a honeybee farm. So he's got over 300 cuys. If those of you who have been in the area know what they are. He's expanding from 300 right now to over 3,000 within the next couple of years. So you kind of just get these really fun experiences, have a good time, hang out with the people that are in the community, and you'll learn more about their culture. You'll learn about what they do every day. You'll learn about how they make money. You'll learn about all of the kind of sensitive things that are hard to ask about. So this is another part that's really important, is project updates and information. So as you're going through the project, to be able to use these tools to be able to understand what's going on with your community. This is called monitoring and evaluation, understanding what went wrong. And a big word in projects these days is resolution. So being able to resolve the issues that come up, going from plan A, which usually never works, to going to plans B through Z, which usually you end up getting to T or Q or S down there, usually at the end of the project. So resolution is a big part of using these tools. Impact statement is another one, to being able to understand and having measures at the end of your project to see what your impact was. At the beginning of your project, you can say, I know what the benefits are, but at the end of the project, how do you actually come up with measures to get there? Or how do you come up with measures to explain the impact that you actually had? And this is a picture of Florentino again with Claudio and the community up in the mountains of Cusco administering surveys. So although I don't know Quechua, Florentino knows Quechua. So he can go and give the surveys and come back to us afterwards and give us the data that he collected. Okay, So now I'm going to get into the tools. And I hope people have questions at the end, so I'm going to save them to the end because I'm going to kind of move through the slides that I have. In triangulation, to not be confused with survey methods of triangulating points, triangulation in anthropology is using diversification in your surveying approach to get an unbiased sample. So what that means is if you look at the pear, it's kind of a pear put together of all these different kinds of fruits, right? So this shows the idea that when you're doing a project, although you may be doing a project surrounded around women or doing a project surrounded by water or energy, you shouldn't only focus on the people that are identified with that project. If you're doing a project about women's groups or support, you should contact the men, talk to the leadership, talk to the surrounding communities, talk to the government, talk to local NGOs. Get everyone's opinion on your project and what you're doing, what's important, what's not important, and then you can put that together and you can kind of get different perspectives all put into one. And this is kind of a part of participatory rapid appraisal, and they call it PRA for short. Participatory rapid appraisal is a way to learn about what your communities are thinking about and to get their perceptions on different things. And like I said, diversity is key. And an ideal team comes into play here because if your team should be your project members and your travel team, your project manager, your faculty mentor, your project mentor, a social science expert, a language expert, and getting all these people together and giving these surveys and using the tool of triangulation to your benefit will really work in getting a total data set that you can use and analyze afterwards to understand what's going on. So the next tool, this is a combination of two, and this is Venn diagrams and snowballing. So Venn diagrams first is a really convenient way, although this may be a little complicated, I'm going to try to dissect this for all of you, is a way to identify leadership in the community. So you can go after your initial surveys, after you've met the people in the community, you can pick out these people that are involved in and are leading certain projects in the community. And you can put them all on a map, and then you can get the certain projects, and you can put circles around them on who is involved. And then you can use different a dot, or a line dot, to identify the different projects on whether they're good, they're fair, or they're poor. And then you can also see who is a leader that you're going to want to pick for your project. So you may see Gilad here. He's involved in the Quran School project. He's involved in the Garden Seed Distribution project, and he's also involved in the Veterinary Center project. So obviously he's a very motivated man, but looking at it, do you want to add another project to his list of projects that he's working on? Are you going to give him a fourth project that he's just going to be like overwhelmed and it's going to go over his head and what he's going to be able to do? So you have to, this Venn diagram tool allows you to see who's working on what are their responsibilities, are they overworked and overloaded because they have too much going on, and what has been their success rate? So have they been involved in good projects? Have all of their projects failed? That kind of stuff. So other people that are involved in good projects, Kabdi or Hassan, might be able to help you out. They've been involved in a successful project, they've learned a lot from it, but they're not as stressed overall. And this is in the Field Guide to Environmental Engineering for Development Workers, which is being sold at one of the tables out there. I've read through this book cover to cover a couple of times. It's really, really useful. It's written by Dr. Mahalsik, which was one of the advisors to our REU in Costa Rica. So we used that book through the whole summer. It's a really good resource. So take advantage of it if you haven't already. And the next tool is snowballing. So I really like this through Calvin and Hobbes. It gives a kind of comical description of the snowballing method in anthropology. And the snowballing method identifies to leader identification as well. So using the snowballing effect, this is how you would do it. You would go to someone in the community, it could be anyone, and you go and ask them, who is someone that's very active in your community? Who is someone that you identify as a leader? And they'll give you a name. So then you go to that person that they just identified as a leader, and you'll ask that person, who do you think is a leader? And then they'll give you, or who is a motivator in your community? Give you a couple names. You go to all those people, And it snowballs, and your list builds and builds and builds until it doesn't build anymore. And you have a list of who has people said is a leader the most. So you have a name that was repeated maybe 10 times, maybe 15 times. You have a name that's repeated maybe once. So you know who's the most active in the community, who's done the most. And this gives you data that can really come together and give you a better understanding of who can help you lead your project. Yeah, Calvin and Hobbes may be able to help you with this, but I doubt it. The next thing is free listing and pile sorting. So this is the third tool that I'll be talking about. Free listing and pile sorting is something anyone in your club can do. A social scientist, social expert does not need to be there to do this. It's a simple yet powerful technique used to study a cultural domain. This is an extremely useful tool to give you perspective on the community. The first part of it is free listing. So what is free listing and why do we do it? Free listing is a technique for gathering systematic data. So what it does is it brings together an idea. So what do you first do is you create a question. I'll go through that in the next slide. But why do you do it is it reflects on the ideas that different communities have, different people within the community, and compares their perspectives on a similar question that you use to identify what words, what phrases, what statements come through on all the different perspectives. And it also identifies different social issues that may be present. So how do you do it? First, you get together with your project team, identify the question. So come together, think about what question you want to ask that gets the answers that you're looking for. Second is to carry out the question. Get a team together, a person who knows the language, that can understand what the person is saying back to you, and that can portray the question in the appropriate way. And sit down and get all the answers to the question. Write it down, make a whole list. Your free listing is all about not having any limits or boundaries. Free listing should be as open as possible. Let them come out and say as many words as possible. Just say, throw them out there. Give them 5-10 minutes and just throw out every single word that they can think of related to the question that can answer the question. So another big part of this is you want a big sample size. You don't only want to ask 1 or 2 people this question. You want to ask 20 to 30 people this question. And this can get a little difficult in rural areas, but do your best. Try to see if you can get as many people involved. And this will also show your involvement in the project. It will show the community that you're interested in progressing forward and interested in their thoughts. Also, an important last part of this is that free listing and pile sorting is not a standalone method. This is not something that you should only do. It shouldn't be the only anthropological method that you employ in your projects. So moving on to pile sorting. So free listing is the initial exercise. Then pile sorting is the second exercise and following up from free listing. This is a technique that connects similar ideas within your question. So from all of the data that you've collected, all of the words, phrases, statements that people have said to you within the time period you gave them, you kind of take them out, dissect them, look at the ones that were in certain categories, see if they fill into a certain category, see if it naturally separates into good, bad, or not related, that kind of idea. And then discover perceptions and similarities among different items. This is the same idea. You can also go and do it a way where you have already identified in your question different categories that already pile sort during your free listing activity. So like I said already, the good, bad, and not relevant example. I'm also going to show a video right now. This is a really good video that shows pile sorting in Africa. So I hope that we can... I'm going to talk a little bit while it buffers, because I was having a problem with it buffering earlier. But pile sorting, I'll talk a little bit about how we did it and what reference frame we did it in Costa Rica. But it's a really useful tool to use when you're kind of confused about why people are thinking a certain way. So if, for example, in a project I'm working on in Honduras, we have 3 different communities that are receiving water from our gravity-fed distribution system. But other people are jealous of a community that's sitting closer to the distribution system because they think that they're having influential access to water because they're closer and they're easier access to the water. So through free listing and pile sorting, we were able to understand that perception, what was going on, what different perceptions were going on in the community, and how people were thinking. So I hope this video works. I hope you guys can get something from it.
In many places where care works, household chores and responsibilities disproportionately fall on the shoulders of women. Women are often expected to work a full day, only to then have to cook for her family, clean the household, and take care of children, often with no help. Pile sorting is a tool that can be used to lead a community reflection on household responsibilities. Together, the community will think about household duties and decisions. What do women do in the household? What do men do? And what do they do together? After introductions, this peer educator in Rwanda shows the community a picture of a woman, then a picture of a man, and lastly a picture with both a man and a woman together. The pictures are placed in a location where the entire group can see them. The peer educator then takes out a set of cards with different household tasks written on them, like washing dishes, taking care of children, fetching water. One by one, each card with a different household chore is shown to the group. The group then discusses who usually performs this task in their home. Is it women, men, or both? Once the group comes to a consensus, the card is placed under the matching picture. As the game continues, usually more and more chores and responsibilities fall under the picture of the woman. One of the most powerful moments of this game is in fact the realization of how much work actually falls on the shoulders of women, and that much of this work is often not considered real work. The facilitator asks if these piles look equal, and if they can be rearranged to be fair. The discussion that follows is focused on what chores can be shared by women and men in the household. This allows the community group to envision alternative roles for men and women. They can also negotiate and discuss openly different ways that husbands and wives can work together for an improved household. By distributing work more fairly within the household, women have greater opportunity to participate in their community.
So that gives you a good idea of how pile sorting can be used in an educational standpoint, and how it's actually used as a method in a field instead of me just talking about it. It's a good way to kind of bring to light some issues that may be thrown under the table or may be hidden from communities and the people within those communities. So think about maybe how you can integrate free listing and pile sorting in your own projects. The next is focus groups. This is another anthropological method used to understand perceptions in a community. And what it's all about is you have one or two people in your project team leading the focus group, or it could be more people in your project team, and you get between 5 or 8 people together in a circle to talk about a series of questions that you have relating to your project, and to get answers to the questions that you have as a team. And what you would really want within those 5 to 8 people, less than 5 or 8, you're not really going to get as much data as you want. More than 5 to 8, it may lead to a little bit of blending of things that you weren't really intending for, or it may kind of lead to conflict in thoughts and ideas. Is you want people in your focus group that have expertise or have knowledge in the questions that you're going to ask, so that you actually get answers and responses to your questions. So for example, in Costa Rica, we were looking for how people were treating their residual waste from their animals, what kind of methods and technologies were they using to do it, and then also we were looking towards people in the community that had been there for a while and that were involved in the community government or in the community boards that could give some insight to the problems that people are telling them every day. So we were able to get responses from those people. I'm using a tubular biodigester. I'm not using anything, and I'm just spreading it onto my fields. And then also, I think there was a school teacher there. She was able to say that there was smells coming from spreading the waste, and the flies were around the school. So it just gives you some insight onto what was going on. Also encourages discussion between the people in the group. So one response from someone could also entice another person to say, oh, that just reminded me of something. And that's a good thing that focus groups really provide, is they provide an environment for people to interact and respond and discuss involvement. Also, with that, you should also have a good proportion of men and women so that you have both genders equally represented. And so this just gives you an idea of what it could look like. It's just an interesting drawing of focus groups and how it could be set up. Usually it's more people than that. And it's usually a really good time. You kind of interact, share your name, share your interests, where you're from, and kind of interact. And maybe you find friends throughout your project through your focus groups. So I have about 15 minutes, and I have 2 more tools I want to go into. But I'm going to take a quick break and kind of change gears real quick, because other than having an anthropological and engineering interest, I kind of am an appropriate technology nut. So I do a lot of research in appropriate technology. I look into the different methods out there that can be a simple, cost-effective, high labor, low capital technology. So I brought a couple with me. I'm kind of shifting gears here real quick. This is One World Football, if any of you guys are familiar with it. This is really cool. It's made out of the similar materials that Crocs are made out of. And it's funded by Sting and his wife. So they're big humanitarianists, big philanthropists, and they developed this thing, and it's used all over the world. Chevy is a big funder of it, and what it does, is a big component, is that it's indestructible, right? So instead of a regular soccer ball where it deflates and you need a pump to pump it back up, this thing deflates and inflates on its own. So if I step on it, or if a car runs over it, the air comes out of it and it immediately reinflates, right? So it just goes back to what a regular soccer ball would be after some amount of time. Really cool, right? So you guys can check this out afterwards if you're interested. I can pass it around too if you guys want. There you go. Just get it back to me afterwards. And you can buy them too. I mean, anyone can buy them. Just go onto their website if you're interested. It's a good gift to bring to a community on your first time down. Then this other one is a bit more complicated. Something I built myself. It took me 6 months or so. It's a hydroelectric generator made out of a car alternator. And it's got a turbine that I made out of PVC. A lot of issues with this in terms of it doesn't actually work right now. So I rewound the whole inside, built a new rotor with magnets. It all fits inside of a 5-gallon bucket. Water comes in the intake, comes down in four nozzles, comes out and hits the turbine, and creates electricity for a community. So something like this, you can find an alternator in a junkyard, copper wired magnets in the country usually, and then the 5-gallon bucket you can find anywhere in the world. I know a lot about this. I've banged my head against the wall, learned through failure many times. So any questions related to hydro, I work in hydro a lot, small scale, big scale, you can ask me afterwards. So I just kind of want to take a quick break, introduce you guys to some appropriate tech. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I know a lot more based on that stuff too. So energy, food, hygiene, security, a lot of appropriate technologies. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. So tool number 5, household surveys. This is maybe the most widely used anthropological method in any of our projects. And this is really an integral part of the new PMEL process and the 906 document. And there's encouragement in household surveys to focus your components of your household surveys and your identification of your household surveys based on what you wrote in your PMEL, so that your data matches your submission of your PMEL document. So that was a point that's really emphasized here in terms of project management and evaluation. So within these surveys, we're going to do a quick case study. Maybe I'll give you a couple of minutes. I think I have a next slide after this, just to kind of see what some questions might look like. What are some issues with certain questions that you don't really want to ask, or what are some questions that are pretty sensitive? And you kind of want to streamline questions too. You want to make sure that when you're administering these surveys that it's not like a page-long response or a couple paragraphs, because you're going to have people waiting in a line to take this survey, or you're going to tell the community that you're giving a survey and you might go house to house, but you don't want to be sitting at that house for a couple hours. You can kind of move the process along to make it streamlined. Also helps with data analysis. If you have a lot of data from these, it's going to be hard to enter them and analyze it. So another thing is sample size. Make sure that your sample size is big so you have a lot of data to work with, and it's not limited by only n is equal to 10 or n is equal to 5. Make sure your diversity is high, men, women, people of different income categories, so you get different ideas from the whole range of the community. And I think Yes. So I want everyone to take 5 minutes, look at the questions I have here, talk with your buddies or your friends or your colleagues around you, and see what kind of issues would come up with this. I might take like 3 or 4 issues, due to time constraints, and then we'll address why I think these are issues. So go ahead, take some couple minutes, look them over, talk with the people around you. Okay, I'm going to jump back in, open it up to some issues you guys may have found. What do you guys think? There may be more issues with this than I even thought, so go ahead.
Question 6 on the bottom is the leading question.
Okay, and how so?
So it leads the person to the answer, like, do you know about the electricity project in the community? And like, I'll do yes, because they don't want to be wrong.
Perfect.
So they'll just say yes, and they don't have to answer further.
Good. So what would be an alternative to that question? What would be a better way to frame it?
Do you know about what we're working on in the community, maybe?
Perfect. Yes. See, so that's a good way of knowing how you're framing questions and making sure that it's not leading them to the answer rather than poking around in their mind and making sure that they can find the answer to the question. And if they don't know it, then you can figure out that they don't know it. And if a lot of people don't know it, then you know that that's an issue. And maybe awareness to that question is an issue. Okay. Good.
Question 5 on the top, is the water contaminated? A lot of times they're not aware that it's contaminated.
Okay. Okay. Good point.
Asking them about how is the water quality.
Sure. Okay. Something else?
Question 9 on the bottom. Can you tell me how much money you make each day? People might be reluctant to share that information with you.
Okay.
If you might try to make them pay more.
I was hoping someone would touch on that because this is kind of a sensitive issue in a lot of communities. For people on the outside coming in, am I going to want to tell someone that I meet how much money I make? In my mind, probably not. I'm going to kind of be very basic in what I tell them. So they might not tell you the actual truth, or they may be really shy and not tell you at all. So this kind of leads to maybe you should leave this out and find other ways of reaching the answer. Maybe working with your NGO that you work with on the ground, and they can figure it out. If they've been working with the community for 5-6 years, they probably know anyway. So you can just ask them instead of asking the community and putting yourself in kind of an awkward situation. Okay. Sure.
Next question, question number 10.
Yep.
I feel like you state something and then you ask if they agree. I feel like it's easier to say yes and no again, like any other question.
Exactly. That's another leading question. Electricity is good for the community. How's another way to frame that?
How do you feel about electricity in your community?
Perfect. There you go. Easy. Bang. But these are kind of things as a student group, there may be people that come up with questions that haven't had any experience with any surveys before that you can immediately, after seeing these kind of issues, be like, okay, that's an issue, we need to change that, that can't be leading, that kind of stuff. Okay, one more and I'll move on.
Question 7, do you have a river source for hydropower? I don't even know what hydropower is.
Yep, good point. Yeah.
And then they might say, yeah, we have a river, so yes.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Education opportunities. All right.
Like a comment real quick on this process. I think the important part is to remember that the reason you're doing a survey is because you don't know the answer to the question.
Yes.
There's not a right answer. You don't know what the right answer is. So the reason that you do these questions is because you're trying to find out what the answer is without bias.
Exactly.
That's the important part. The without bias, not the do they know the right answer. Because
That's right.
you don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, and also going back to tool number 1 of triangulation, triangulation should be embedded in all of your different processes and getting a diverse sample size, and data information for all of your different steps. Okay, cool. I hope you guys got something from that. So as a wrap up, I talked about 5 different tools. These are all tools that you can use in your work and in your projects: focus groups, household surveys, free listing pile sorting, triangulation. All of these 5 different tools can really be integral in your process of getting data, being able to use it, and being able to apply it to your installation, your engineering design, making sure that your engineering design is appropriate, something that I really focus on, making sure that it's accepted by the community, that it's culturally aware, make sure that it's not approaching on any other projects, and making sure that success can be ensured even though you went to steps B through Z. So anthropology, although we can get a little bit frustrated with anthropologists as engineers. We want to do it, and kind of not take the time sometimes. But as EWB members, as people who are responsible social licensees, we need a social license to operate, is really important in these projects. So I think I touched on all that. I think it's time I could ask a lot of questions. We have plenty of time to discuss certain things that people are curious about. I can talk more about a Costa Rica program. I can talk more about appropriate technology. Anything anybody's interested in? Yeah.
We are currently working in a community that's more just like a group of Highland families. How would you suggest going about these sort of things when it's probably about a half-an-hour walk between houses?
I have the same issue so Highlands of which country? Guatemala. Okay. So within the community that I work in, a house is on this peak of the mountain, the other house is on the peak of that mountain. So it is difficult when you do it. And how I've done it is I went in December, and Christmas is pretty big in the community. So everyone just came piling into the community center. There are chocolatadas and panettone, if anyone's been to that area. They love it. And they were all together, and that was a perfect spot to do surveying. So I would suggest that you find a certain day, organize a meeting a couple months ahead of time, and tell everyone to be there at that point in time, which they may not be, but holidays is a really good time to do it. Even though it's kind of a place where not any work's going to get done, there's a lot of talking and conversation that's going to happen. Yeah, Roddy can add to that too.
I also just encourage you to go door to door and just kind of split up your team to get to as much as you can. I know my chapter community is in Ghana, so it's a little bit of a different situation, but we just kind of take time to have like 3 different people going with 3 different community members saying, all right, you're going to take like the north side of the community, we'll take the west, and then comparing our data to them. So, you know, going to them if they can't come to you is really.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. You mean like where does it go? Does it go to a landfill? That's a good question. I bet it could be recycled. I mean, they use a lot of these things for playground material, these rubbers. So like old tires, they'll chop up and put it in a playground or something like that, which this has probably the same properties. Yeah.
I just had a quick comment just about a lot of times anthropology and engineering or psychology are looked at as dichotomous.
Mhm.
And just a good addition could be, which I'm sure the NSF is trying to lean towards, the nexus of the two. And as an engineer, one of the reasons I considered myself an engineer, even though I didn't fit in, I'm 1 year out, I worked, was because of the engineering mindset. And that's why a lot of engineers go work for these big places. Approaching anthropology as you have these goals, these are the parameters that you need. So, you know, instead of time and money and, you know, just looking at it as a society and only making sure that you make sure to incorporate the human element.
Yep.
So I think that especially would help us, an engineering student or professional, just,
Yeah.
you know, it's not a question.
I have a lot of respect for anthropologists. They jump in 2 feet all the time. They're always jumping straight in to the most difficult situations. They learn a lot. But engineers also, we get a little frustrated. We want to get things done. And sometimes anthropology, social science, these kind of surveys can stop us from getting there. But it's incredibly important. And even though we may get frustrated, you kind of have to get over that and move forward and learn more about the community than you may initially want to. So, yeah.
My community is a really large community, about 1,100 people. So getting a large sample size is really difficult. What are your recommendations for like how big of a sample size you recommend?
There are limits because, as Dr. Amade would say, there's paralysis by analysis. So there's at times where you're just like, oh, I have way too much data. This is ridiculous. We can possibly handle this. So you have to say, okay, here's a limit of where we're at. Like I gave you a suggestion before. N is equal to 20 to 30. Limit it to that 20 to 30. Only pick people that you think are going to be able to give you incentive questions. Pick people that are going to keep your sample size diverse between 20 and 30, men, women, professionals, community leaders, government officials, politicians. So even though your community is 1,100 people, you're probably not going to get a household survey in every one of those 1,100 people, the homes of those 1,100 people. So I would say stick to those N sample sizes of 20 to 30. Also in focus groups, 5 to 8 people. Do maybe, since the community is so big, do maybe 2 or 3 different focus groups. That's what I would recommend. Sure.
I think that my main challenge in using some of these techniques, and I think you're talking definitely added to some techniques
older people's opinions or answers to questions are more valuable than younger people's, men's are more valuable than women's, things like that. And so when you put people in a group, especially in kind of societies that tend to be more consensus-based, where, the first or second people to answer a question in a group are the answers that then the whole group adopts as correct. So I'm wondering what, so the way that I've gotten around that in the past is by your diversity technique.
Yeah.
Asking many different people in many different situations, not all in the same different group, the same question and trying to amalgamate the different answers. So I'm just wondering if anybody in the room actually has other ideas about how to encourage getting at what the community's answer to the question is, without kind of being overrun by the opinions of the important people in the community.
That's a hard question. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have an answer to that. So, a lot of literature takes the idea of kind of like safe spaces, if you've heard of that in universities for LGBTQ communities, and transplant that into projects. So, for example, like we tried, like a very generic focus group in our community, and we like realized this problem very quickly, which is like why it's good to like do this as an initial method, and then we kind of decided that we weren't getting answers on like how these things were like affecting women's health, because like they felt like they couldn't speak up, and so we just created like a women's only focus group, and we prefaced it by saying like this is a safe space, you guys like all know each other, you put together like no leadership here, and they opened up a lot more. We got a lot more data, so kind of having demographic specific things at times and balancing that with like the diversity, and then kind of like contrasting that, like run the data, see what the frequency of responses are between the two, and what that tells you.
Awesome.
And that's someone here that, I don't know how many people at universities use like eye clickers, so like being
Oh, I hate those.
anonymous, so anonymous voting, and like, there's restrictions in any community or place that we go, but was obviously getting biased answers, and then had a focus group or a large community meeting where they've gotten these eye clickers for the people to anonymously vote, and then I think it's always amazing because you can do that with a chart, and the community is actually kind of shocked when they actually see what the response is.
I think that's really cool. Yeah.
You have anonymous.
We were in Peru once, and a girl that was with our group they told her specifically not to speak in the community meeting because none of the women are allowed to speak. So that's a big point. If these women, specifically any target group that's kind of under the radar and not allowed to voice their opinion, that's a great idea. Have a random sample of data that they don't have to speak to be able to give their opinion. So separate question? Go ahead. Oh, okay. Go ahead first.
And also related to that, I think it's important to talk to community leaders and figure out again, like what would be culturally sensitive. So if you're talking to women, it's really hard sometimes when you have a guy who's your translator because they don't want to share that information with them. So similarly, like girls can talk in a career meeting, well, if a guy is the translator in a girl meeting, then you're not going to necessarily get as much information as you could. So definitely talk to community leaders who would understand that social dynamic is important.
Yep.
For getting as much information as you can.
Yeah. Thanks. Sure.
Yeah, we were doing survey, going door to door in El Salvador, and we had a list of questions including, do you wash your hands after going to the bathroom? And some people were offended by the question. So I guess it makes a difference how you ask the question.
Definitely.
Is there a better way to do it? I'll try to explain, well, some of my peers, engineers, I know they don't do it, so,
Yeah.
I only it helped a bit, but, you get a different answer depending on how you have to be sensitive about how you.
Yes. 100%. And the sensitivity also can be lost in, okay, I know English is my native language, but if I try to speak Spanish, I'm trying to be culturally sensitive, but I just say the totally wrong word, and it just falls off the cliff. And they're just like, wait, what did you say? So be very careful with that. Sure. Yes.
I have a question about, in your example, you talk a lot about changing cultural norms. Is there any tools that you have for identifying what is an actual positive change for a cultural norm, and what's a westernized version of what we think a positive change is in their community?
I think this is going to be talked more about in the presentation at 1 o'clock with Roddy, about how do you understand your data and how do you kind of put it into perspective and what's actually a cultural norm, and then how is the new cultural norm being formed, and in what pathways is it being formed. I don't have initial thoughts on that right now. I have to think about it, but because that's really deep too. I mean, that's thinking about how is change actually happening. And in electricity projects, they haven't had electricity for hundreds of years since they've been established as an indigenous community. So why are we pushing Western ideas and Western technology in communities where cultures have never had this to encourage progress and cultural change? So it's an issue that a lot of international development companies and organizations work with every day. But in the end, you want to make sure that everything that you're doing is what they want and not what you want. So if they want it, then you know their culture is progressively changing and evolutionizing because they're pushing that evolution, not because the group who's doing it is pushing the evolution. Sure.
Thank you for your presentation. I applaud you for making sure the anthropological point is brought up. There's a tool out there called Globe Smart, which is available to all EWB members, and we're going to be talking about it this afternoon, which is a tool to really assess your own work style and then to make sure you're addressing the cultural that you're interacting with.
What
Okay.
section are you in?
215, Working Globe Smart.
Okay. I like the discussion, so this is great. Go ahead.
So I find that what my topic is about politics is more figuring out logistically how do you put this kind of thing in a travel trip when you're so limited on time, and you also have a lot of engineering to get covered too. I was wondering if you could, if it's just examples from an anecdotal example, how did you guys wrap this anthropology, surveying kind of situation into your also engineering thinking as well?
So this is also difficult, and it comes down. The question was, how do you? Sorry, I haven't been repeating the questions, but the question was, how do you organize your trip so that your engineering and the anthropology can be done? So the first thing is, and this is what I've learned by failure as well, is don't go to the community the first time and think that you can do any engineering or implementation. Not going to happen. Do not go to the community the first time and say, this is the first time I've been here. We're going to build something, and we're going to get it done this time. No, doesn't work. In my experience, anyway. You guys may have pulled it off, and I applaud you for it. But before you do any implementation or engineering, you should go the very first time, absorb the community, do site assessment, administer your surveys, and don't do any implementation. See what resources are there, kind of connect with your NGO, and work with the people that are there and learn about their culture, learn about their language, learn about the people they work with, that kind of stuff. So I think that first trip is very, very important, and that's the trip you can do a lot of your anthropology on to begin. And then your second, your third, your fourth trip can be your implementation trips where you do your engineering. And there's a lot of exceptions to this rule, obviously. It's not like you should always do your very first trip with only assessment. So I think that's just a general guideline in my experience. I went to Peru thinking I could build these generators the first time and have them work successfully. No, it doesn't work.
Yeah, by the way, you mentioned about that because with Snowballing, we have a pricing process that starts with pre-assessment.
That's right.
In fact, a lot of those excellent presentations.
Thanks.
A lot of those can be called. And I think somebody mentioned about Costa Rica. So, yeah, we have a pricing process.
Yes.
We don't implement all the first and second. We have to get a package before you do a trip. It's called pre-assessment trip.
That's right.
We have to have it before, and that has to be approved by the project manager.
Yeah, I haven't really brought that up much, but we all should know the intricacies of the EWB process. We put a lot of time into making those reports, a lot of time submitting them to EWB, so this kind of gives you guidelines of what to do on your trips, too.
But don't get me wrong, you just gave a very insightful and excellent presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good tool for us.
Yeah. Yes.
Back to the Venn diagrams and snowball diagrams, was the Venn diagrams, were those like people in your chapter, or were those community, people involved in projects in the community?
You could use both.
Okay, usually both.
Yeah. With Venn diagram, that was a picture I pulled from the book. So the book is used. I didn't actually do it. That wasn't my work. That was the book work from the book. But you can take, if you are looking for a new project manager within your club, you can say, these are all the people that we know are motivated and interested, and then you can make the Venn diagram method. You could do the Venn diagram method.
Probably chapter members, because the project, it seemed like it would have been that. Okay, and then the snowball is maybe a little bit more focused on
The community. Yeah, because within your own group, you've kind of already identified who is your president, your vice president, all that kind of stuff. But if you have a community that doesn't have a board at all, then you got to start from scratch. There's no precedent, that kind of idea.
Thank you.
Yep, sure, right here.
Do you have any example surveys that you actually use in the field that you'd be willing to share with us?
Actually, probably I could. So one kind of thing I screwed up is I didn't add my contact info on there. So, what's that? Put my contact info up there?
Do another presentation of yours. You forgot that time today.
Oh, whoops. Maybe a common fault of mine. Sorry about that. But if you guys want to write it down, real easy, DeckerThomasJ@gmail. So easy enough to remember. Decker, T-H-O, yes. DeckerThomasJ@gmail. So any questions, feel free to ask. D-E-C-K-E-R, Thomas, Thomasj@gmail. Sorry. Would have been better if I put it there.
Just one more comment on the EWB project process and everything, and I agree with your point that it's really hard to fit both in. And I know that my project is struggling with this, is that the PMEL process was started in the middle of the project, and I know that a lot of people with existing projects are trying to get started in the middle, and so assessment transfer is the perfect time to do surveys because you have that time to take a survey, but in the middle of the presentation, it was really, really hard to like set aside time, like multiple hours per day on your trip to go talk to these people. So I don't know what the solution is, but it's definitely something that I know a lot of people.
Yep. In progress projects, it's difficult. We have a project in Honduras that's finishing out. And because we're already finishing, we're not required for the PMEL process. But you can task your NGO on the ground to do it. You know, ask them if they have the time and efforts to be able to go in the community and get the data for you instead of you having to do it. We're only there for, 1-2 weeks out of the year. So EWB UK takes a different approach. They send professionals to live in country and implement their projects instead of going 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time. And this has kind of proved an effective model for them. So it's a bit different approach, and maybe in the future, USA takes that approach. Who knows if it's actually going to work. But you have to think that the NGO's there every single day, you know? So, go ahead.
I just have a
One more.
question to that. So especially our NGO, they're more like an engineering-based team, so it's like not very helpful for them to go into the community, a lot of community members, stuff. But definitely if you have like a community leader, that's the person we have actually walk around and do all these kind of surveys. We find that she is able to get a lot more information out of them. They all trust her and we trust her as well. So if you can build that kind of trust relationship with someone who's the head of the community, they might be the most effective person while you're doing all the engineering work for them to go and run around and do the home surveys and start to build those connections. That's also kind of like a good way to show that they are still leading this project, that they're the person to go to. It builds trust in the community, that they have someone to talk to when things go wrong. So I think that that's a really valuable way of going about it.
Yeah, quick plug. Government can also be an option. A lot of census bureaus and governments, you can ask them to administer your surveys. And they know the language too, so. Sure.
I have a comment about surveys. Just an example that in the U.S. They're talking about gun control, and you get different answers depending on what kind of question do you ask. If you ask people whether they support restrictions in gun sales, many people will say no. But if you ask the same person a question, should a person with a history of mental illness walk into a gun store and buy a bunch of guns with extended clips, they would say no way. So you can use the same kind of logic in those surveys. Instead of asking, do you wash your hands after going to the bathroom, you may ask, where do you think is the source of contamination?
Sure.
Or
Sure. There's also, the diagram of the tree. You have the roots, which can be the root causes. You have the stem, which is the actual problem, and then you have the branches, which are the impacts of the problems or what's happened as a result of the problem. So you can think of it that way as well, and kind of gear your questions on different parts of the tree.
I kind of just want to reiterate what he was saying. It's a really good point to avoid strategic questions and strategic bias.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really good book.
Sorry about that.
By professors at CU Boulder, Philip Graves, where he talks some specific damages, where he talks about these questions that you were addressing, leading questions, and he goes into the factors and the consequences of what happens because he's actually done studies on this. He goes around the U.S. just giving seminars about this. And I just wanted to point out that Philip Graves, environmental economics, he's really good for monitoring about.
Yeah, this touches on the importance of having people in your project team that know what they're doing with this kind of stuff. They can give you insight on how to make these surveys. We are also pushing in our club. We're right on Syracuse University campus, so we're reaching out to the Syracuse University Language Department and their anthropology department. So if you have those resources at your university, even though the department's not involved in your club, reach out to them. It's not going to hurt.